This is the London Fintech Podcast, bringing you practical insights and approaches, stories and inspiration from the innovators who are building the new world of financial services. This podcast is brought to you by NextWave, strategy specialists and solutions for financial institutions. Welcome to the London Fintech Podcast. Whilst we've hosted guests on this show from firms of all sizes across the fintech space, some of them small and early in their journey, we're privileged to be speaking today with one of the world's largest. For those who don't know them, not many I presume from the LFP audience, Bank of America is the number one bank in the US in terms of retail deposits and number two globally in terms of market cap. They have almost 70 million consumer and business customers and operate in the US and 35 countries internationally. Despite its size, the firm was voted the world's most innovative bank in 24 by Global Finance. And this is something that I find particularly intriguing and that we're going to delve into on this episode. I'm delighted to be joined by Andrew McKibben from Bank of America. Andrew is the head of International Technology and CIO for Global Corporate Investment Banking and also head of technology for Global Payment Solutions. He's a passionate advocate for STEM and workplace diversity, and he's also a key member of Bank of America's top leadership committees. Andrew is based in London, but has a remit that covers the globe. This has been one of my favourite episodes so far this year, partly because of the scale of fintech that Andrew looks after, but also his level of customer focus and the curiosity and openness that comes through from the discussion. I hope you agree. Let's go to the conversation. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. So before we dive into technology and innovation, can you just tell us a bit about your career journey and what path led you to your current role?
I tell you, I've always been a bit curious about how things work. I mean, as a child, which was some time ago now, I would take things apart and try and rebuild them, with an objective of really finding out how and why they worked the way that they did. And I found that a really valuable learning experience. And then when I was older, I managed to get hold of a Sinclair Spectrum. It was like one of the first microcomputers.
Yeah, I had one of those.
It was for playing games. Then it had a very basic programming language in it. So I would create simple things like general programming and game development. And then that sort of extended really into university, where I was doing sort of computer science. And even there, I built my own computer rather than buy it. Part of that was cost-effective reasons, and part of it was just the process of having to think about the different components and what type of component and the quality of that component and how it might need to work together. So it was no great surprise that my first job was as a software developer. I was okay enough to pay me to do something that I loved, which was really good. And why a bank? It seemed obvious to me, on sort of reflection. I was interested in things that were global. Banks are complex. They operate across multiple countries. And at that time, banks were putting a lot of money, a lot of technology investment into modernization and forward thinking from an innovation perspective and how they might better serve clients. So for me, it was that sort of long journey around deconstruction and construction, software development, university, into a job that seemed the right fit. I joined what was Dresdner Kleinwort Wasserstein. Then I worked in London and Frankfurt, liked working there, just first firm, thought I'd go explore something different. Joined what was Merrill Lynch in sort of later part of 2006. That was London and Singapore. Bank of America acquired Merrill Lynch 2009. So I got asked to return back to London to get involved in the two banks, sort of the integration of the two banks. But it was really always in technology, always had a passion for innovation, constructing things that sort of led me to where I am.
Yeah, I love that curiosity and the builder DNA, and it's come through quite a lot talking to people on this show, actually, and the ones who've risen through the ranks and perhaps gone on to found their own firms. It's always because I want to build something, and I was really curious. And we've had people who started out with Raspberry Pis and Sinclair Spectrums, and and other things that they've created when they were very early.
Yeah, I the Spectrum 128K, which was the grey plastic one, as opposed to the one prior, which was rubber keys that used to get warm when I would have used them too much.
Was that the one where you had to upload programs by plugging a cassette player?
Yeah.
And it sounded like a fax machine.
It was. And sometimes it wouldn't work. So you'd have to go back to the start and do it all again.
Right. So for the audience, we are actually very innovative and modern on the LFP, but we're dating ourselves here. But you go right back to punch cards and debt drives. But that's where it all started. So now you're looking after the international technology function, which is a big part of the overall Bank of America picture, I guess. But how big and what do you look after in the current job?
Simply put, maybe I would describe it as I oversee technology for the bank outside the United States. I do that work in close partnership with global peers, many of whom are in the United States, country, regional, and international executives. That's really to ensure that our clients can operate in every country that they need to operate with our support. I also serve as the CIO for the Global Corporate Investment Bank and Global Payment Solutions. And, there are different parts of that. So the Corporate Investment Bank does investment bank advisory, underwriting, lending, leasing, payment solutions. But really, look, a practical example of that is we do for companies what we do for consumers. So companies have a bank account with us. They deposit money. We extend credit. We move money for them in country across different jurisdictions instantaneously in some cases as well. So we sort of bank companies in the way we bank consumers would be a good practical example of that.
Yeah. And so you have teams in 35 different countries. Is that correct?
As a company in technology, it's a little less. Not every country we require technology teams there, but in almost all of those, we do have technology teams, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you're traveling a lot?
Traveling a lot. Yes, traveling a lot, juggling that along with a family as well.
Yeah, this sort of thing, and obviously we're recording this remotely, and everyone's collaborating on Teams or Zoom, whichever is your favoured platform. But that goes a certain way. But when you're managing an international footprint, you do need to travel a lot, and people need to be in the office from time to time as well. So
you do. I think it's also really important to. I think it's really important for innovation that close sort of proximity in terms of solving business problems creatively and efficiently.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important in preserving culture.
Yeah.
Like, what's the identity of a firm? How do people work together? In what way? And I think you can have an erosion of that culture if people are too distributed and too remote in sort of how they work.
Yeah, and I think we're going to move on from the point, but there is a sort of new working pattern, which is a balance between in-person and remote, and the tools have got way better for remote, but it still needs to be. You still need equilibrium. So let's just talk about a big picture view on the industry, if we could. The theme for the conversation today is technological excellence. And I noted in my intro that Bank of America have been recognized for innovation and tech leadership. How important do you think being on the front foot with technology in that way is for competitive advantage?
It's a great question. And I think it's really fundamental. I mean, it's really fundamental to maintaining a competitive advantage in banking. I think it drives client attraction and retention as well as operational sort of efficiency. I think increasingly clients are digitally native, so they're growing up with technology. They use it in their personal life as well as at work. So they've got very clear ideas as to the capabilities and user experiences that they expect, and their demands for banking experiences that streamline their business, I think, are just set to continue to increase. So, meeting that demand inevitably is sort of fundamental. And I think we try and do that by sort of listening, partnering with clients to develop the right business strategy and then delivering the right technology for those needs. And look, I think as a bank, our approach is second to none. It's really at the heart of how we innovate, develop technology. It's really at the center of what we do, and it drives investments, strategic investments. I mean, our digital banking platform, Cash Pro, is a sort of proprietary system built at the bank, extended at the bank, and serves 40,000 companies worldwide across all the countries that we operate and our companies and clients need us to be.
Yeah, I was going to ask you for an example. So, what's that behind some of the awards and recognition that you've been getting? And I think that's a great example as a sort of global digital platform for the consumer base. So that customer expectation, and I had a conversation on this show last year with Sarah Levy, who's the chief exec of Betterment, and she talked about providing wealth services for the zillennial generation, which I've kept ever since because I really like that phrase. It's the digital native, and that firm is much smaller, but making amazing progress, but very tech first. And it's all about listening to the customer and rapid adaptation of the products and services to meet the consumer demand. How important is talking to the customer, and how do you harness that in the context of Bank of America?
I think to the point that you made, and I was on the show, I think you need to harness it. I think it's about delivering technology solutions for the customer through a customer lens, which means you have to spend time with them. You have to listen, or really listen to what people are saying. Sometimes it's hard, right? Just to really listen and absorb and understand. So you've got to ask a lot of questions and be really curious, right? Okay, well, I understand what you're trying to do. I think that's the right thing, or have we thought about this alternative? And collaborate a bit on delivering the right outcomes. I think, you really have to start with assessing what they're trying to achieve, what challenges they face, reinventing capabilities and services to map to those priorities. And I think, that allows us to deliver the right products and services. And I think you have to have a culture of innovation to do that as well. And that culture of innovation coupled with sustained long-term investment, I think gives you an ability to better go do that.
Yeah. Can you talk a bit about how a firm size of Bank of America fosters that culture of innovation, and sort of how do you connect with your customer base to get that input, given that you've got such a big footprint and such a big customer base? I imagine that's a challenge.
Yeah, I think being global and local helps, right? So, we're a big global firm, of course, and we have scale and we have resource and I think skills and expertise. But to your point at the start around the number of countries that we're in, and we've got depth of experience and knowledge in those countries that we can leverage with customers in those countries, I think goes a long way. So you have a global perspective, you've got a local perspective that together allows you to get to a better outcome, right? And I think having a culture that enables that in a distributed way, I think is really important, as opposed to some centralized view of what that should be or what that engagement should be. Look, we sort of encourage all employees to innovate, and be forward thinking, regardless of their role in technology or outside of technology. That, I think, better positions us to be adaptive to that which is, changing sort of around us. As a bank, we have over 7,000 patents granted and applied for from nearly 8,000 different employees in 14 countries.
I read that ahead of the show, and I thought maybe I got the number wrong. And I think 1,100 of them are in AI and machine learning. How did you get the workforce to prioritize and focus on that?
Yeah, look, I think culturally it's enabling it by also being supportive, right? And actually being supportive to employees that have an idea, that you can support the guidance and the enablement of the idea. And I think the distributed model, from my point of view, works really well, as opposed to individuals looking for some central team or innovation hub to innovate, and it's doing all the cool stuff, right? If you really work hard culturally to ensure everyone feels they can go do that, they should go do that, they'll be supported in that, I think you stand, a reasonable chance more than if you don't. And look, to your point on 11, I think maybe around 1,200 now of those are AI sort of related, so AI and machine learning related. That's a 94% increase, I think. Someone will, tell me if I'm wrong. A 94% increase since 2022, right? So just the last 3 years alone, just the energy around doing interesting, innovative, cool things there that benefit our clients has just really accelerated.
Yeah, it does seem extraordinary. I've been in and around a lot of the big banks, and you don't hear the chatter about patents particularly. There's lots of innovators who are on the front foot, and lots of people trying to stay on the front line of engineering expertise. But actually securing, thousands of patents for innovation, I think, is a little unusual.
With the most granted patents of any financial services company.
Yeah. And are there any of those that you'd call out as being great examples of that innovation? I don't know what you've patented, but it must be pretty far ranging.
Yeah, I'd say, look, there's a lot around AI. We think about responsible AI, so there's always a human in the loop evaluating the outcomes. There's examples that are used externally for the benefit of clients and internally for employees that actually benefits clients. So if I think about sort of external, so in the US, in consumer, we developed a platform called Erica, which is an AI platform that consumers use that bank with us in sort of the US. And that provides like a virtual service advisor, but also gives, great insights into spending patterns as an example. So, if you have a gym membership and, it used to cost, $50 a month and it increases to $60 a month, it will tell you, right? It will tell you that, did you know that this membership has increased from $50 a month to $60 a month? It helps consumers better manage their finances. And leveraging the scale that we have, we took the same platform and integrated into CashPro, which I mentioned earlier, which is a digital banking channel for companies, 40,000 companies worldwide. And we put the same technology into that. From an internal perspective, look, there's a lot that we have a platform that leverages natural language processing and machine learning to answer queries that arise during a trading day for our global market business. So that continues to improve the accuracy of responses, but it might be related questions like, real-time market depth, trading indicators, historical trading volumes, current exposures. So there's and what that does actually is it enables teams internally to better access to information, to also, in some cases, respond to client inquiries with greater consistency and speed. So the client benefits every, deployment of that type of technology. It's always how might the client benefit, whether it's something that's they can use directly or whether it's an indirect benefit through an employee using it internally.
Yeah, some great examples there. So it's sort of enhancing the employee capability and thereby providing a better service. But you've got natural language advisory agent running on consumers and the same thing running on SMEs and the businesses that you bank in the consumer bracket. And then I was hearing there that you've got similar technology running across the trading desk, which I'm not sure so many firms have that. I think it's an ambition, from the conversations I have, folks at very different stages on that AI adoption journey, but some really good examples there. Well, I wanted to ask you about the market environment, the technology horizons. So these macro trends and priorities, because there's so much out there. That AI last 2.5 years since ChatGPT went mainstream and Gen AI was out there. This year it's agentic AI, so AI plus automation, autonomous systems and synthetic workers, and everyone's leaning into the opportunity and trying to understand, how do you do that? Do you do that in a regulated industry? There's quantum, there's cloud, there's probably cyber evolution. There's a whole bunch of other things that I could probably talk about, not to mention the whole world of crypto and distributed ledgers. So how do you see the evolving technology environment and maybe tying that back to the bank's priority and strategy?
Yeah, I think to your point, there's a lot there and it changes really quick.
Yes.
So, I'm not sure if I were predicting always what happened and I looked back at the success rate of that. It tends to move quickly and you have to adapt to that which is sort of around you. Look, I'd say we try and stay very current through industry engagement, collaboration, but being very intentional on bringing people together that might improve our own learning, our own experiences, our own sort of perspectives. So, an example of that is, in the UK, every July we host like a breakthrough technology summit. It brings together, a small group, 50 or so, of the world's most influential sort of innovators, pioneers, investors, academic CEOs to discuss technologies that are set to transform our world, right? And some of that's sort of AI and quantum and fusion and, aerospace and stuff like that. But it's really important to be, I think, connected into that ecosystem, not that which is today or not that which is maybe in the next few years, but even beyond that. I think things like that help shape priorities and look are focused beyond innovation, strategic investment, and leveraging emerging technologies. Also, as one around talent and upskilling to sustain what I think is, a real example of technology leadership. We have development centers or areas where we have a lot of technologists sort of together. Dublin would be a good example of that. We have the same in London, with the same in Chester, with the same in the US and other parts of the world, where we focus a lot on digital training, ensure our teams are really equipped with the skills needed to drive future innovation. I'd say, that industry collaboration is really important as well. Not just the summit, and then investing in employees, but collaborating with technology companies, fintechs, as part of the broader financial ecosystem. I think to learn is an enabler of progress, not just for the bank, but the industry as a whole, right? With a goal of, making, financial lives, whether it's sort of consumers or companies, just better, right? How can we go do that better as an industry? And look, to your point around trends, we, clearly focus on AI, as I've said, and some examples of that. And I think we focus on the responsible side of it, just ensuring that there's human oversight and accountability at every stage in every deployment. And it has to benefit a client in some way. That might be even internal efficiency that gives teams more capacity to do more for a client. It might be to respond more quickly to a client. It might be to spend, more time dealing with something more complex for the client. But there is a lot of benefit, a lot of upside to it.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, you've mentioned culture a few times, and it's so important, and particularly the pace of technical evolution, which is now outstripping the enterprise's ability to adopt, right? So AI is being adopted twice at the speed of the internet, and that's being measured by someone. And you see it everywhere. And I was at one of the big innovation conferences last week, and the 25 panel sessions with AI in the title. And those who were in the driving seat, the overarching theme was, it's all about the culture and the people, and it's change management and transformation is the biggest blocker, because it's not the next model, because there'll be another one next week and then the next one. And so, okay, if you're architecting, you should do it in a way where these models are interchangeable and you future proof. But actually, it's not about that. It's about bringing the organization with you. So literacy and education and culture. And we've been running innovation roundtables, AI roundtables with some of our clients and network. And we've had people from the same firm at opposite ends of a breakfast table, where we've got the engineering head saying, I've already done several LLMs and we've been building machine learning models for years and we're right on the front foot and we've built everything. And we've got his business counterpart at the other end of the table saying, yeah, I don't really know. Why is this a good thing for me? How do I use it? Okay. And I think we have to bridge that gap, right? Because there's only one direction of travel.
You're absolutely right. It's not always about the technology at all, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an enabler to an outcome that you want to achieve for some purpose, which is for us would be a client, but it changes so quickly. The competitive landscape changes so quickly as well, that really what you're trying to focus in on is the right culture, an innovative culture, an adaptable culture with an adaptable set of skills that change over time, whatever those problems might be, because we're going to have new problems, next year, the year after that. And you're trying to build that resiliency, that adaptability across the company to adapt to an ever-changing set of circumstances.
Yeah. And I think the ecosystem point is so important as well, because we're clearly in a digital connected world, a digital connected economy, and no firm can, afford to ignore the network effects that are out there. And in fact, some of them could be very beneficial to big institutions, because if you have a big balance sheet, but your distribution arms haven't got the reach or the speed that you need, well, guess what? You can do a tie-up with a lending fintech, and maybe they can lend some of the book for you. And you've seen things like that. And I'm sure the banks are doing some of those things. Okay, so we talked a lot about new systems and innovation and keeping pace with the rapidly evolving tech market. But big firms like Bank of America, and there's There's a big bank that I did a lot of work with earlier in my career, and just in the global markets area, they had 800 different systems running. You will have legacy systems and complex infrastructures. How does Bank of America keep pace and modernize at the right velocity in, as we've already discussed, a very fast-moving technology environment?
Yeah, look, it's a great question, and that's something we sort of continue to focus on, sort of invest on. I think when you view technology as a strategic competitive advantage, an enabler for your business and your clients, I think you can make the right investment decisions more of the time to go modernize, be nimble, adaptable, to have the right type of architecture that's also resilient, adaptable, and secure at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Which is also a big sort of focus area. So I think it's, and I've sort of said it before, but when it runs through the company, the technology is important. It's a strategic enabler for the business. And even in, moments of stress in a particular market or globally over time, it sort of doubles down on that thinking. Then those things become easier, right? It's not such an uphill battle. And that's not to be naive to some of those sort of complexities, right? Like, very aware of the adaptability of newer fintechs. We have a lot of scale, client resources, knowledge at a global and local level. I think we can partner with, fintechs and tech companies as well. We can collaborate on better outcomes for the industry as a whole. But, when you really have that philosophy of technology being strategically important, I think it makes it a lot easier to reduce that complexity, to continue to invest, to be pushing the boundaries of what's possible all of the time.
Yeah, I think it's the right attitude, because it becomes, how might we put the pieces together to deliver better for the customer? And that can include, as we've just been discussing, those fintech alliances and partnerships. The big FIs are going to have size of balance sheet, scale, reach, and you are dealing with firms that are in many cases much smaller, more agile. But if you have the right attitude, then the sum of the parts is going to be a better outcome for everyone.
And look, I think that scale and that approach is probably, no doubt, a large part of what we spend today. I mean, we spend, approximately $13 billion a year on technology at the company. I mean, it's just, whatever way you just look at it, it's just big.
Yes, there's no way of writing that as a small number.
No, but it's that, thinking and approach that runs through the company about it's strategically important to invest in it.
Yeah.
To, your point, to modernize. You want adaptable, resilient, secure systems that you can go make changes to quickly, to go support what a client needs. And it's not easy because, to your point, big systems, in big companies that operate globally in a lot of different markets, you have a lot of complexity. But when that's really the heart of how you're approaching it, I think it gets a lot easier.
Yeah. And how does the bank decide what to invest in? Because there must be a lot of choice in that landscape.
Yeah, there always is. And it's a big number, but there's always prioritization, right, in that number. So I think it's just really listening to the needs of clients, as the demands of digitally native clients evolve, focusing on identifying technologies that can help, streamline processes, improve efficiency, create a more personalized experience for our client. Meeting those needs require continued investment, sustained investment. And sometimes that's like the super cool stuff that people will use directly. And sometimes that's, ensuring it's always available. It's performant, it's resilient, it's secure. And not everyone sees those things all of the time. But I think it's super important that you focus on both, because look, whatever is happening globally at any point in time in any market, there might be volatility, there might be new demands on volume. You always have to be there to do what a client needs you to do. In extreme market scenarios, you never can have a scenario where a client is thinking, oh, I can't go do that with Bank of America because it can't support that volume. So our objective is always to be there and invest in those things as well. So whatever a client needs when they need it, then we can be there to support them.
It's a super important point, because when one's thinking about innovation and new features, would be easy to overlook the fact that this is an always-on, highly regulated industry operating at scale, and if you don't have the cyber protection and resilience, it only gets noticed when something breaks. And in the UK, we've had various banks where the systems have gone offline.
Isn't it? I mean, banking's a trust business. Any erosion of trust isn't good. It's not good. Wouldn't be good for us, but isn't good for the industry.
Yeah, I don't know what the sort of the brand impact measurement is on those glitches. It's also going to be a big number. We cannot afford to be in the headlines.
Yeah, it's certainly not good. It's certainly not good.
So look, we started the conversation. We've talked a lot about technology, about innovation, but we actually started the conversation with the culture point, which I liked, because that's the people. So you know, when you're looking at the space, one would look at people, process, data, technology. But just coming back to the people point, because I think that is fundamental. That's the team, that's the foundation that you've built technological excellence upon. And we can have the debate about how much of that's going to be done by agentic AI in the future. Well, actually, maybe that's the question. Where do you see the skills demand going forward, and how much of that perhaps is going to go to AI, and what's the influence on the employee of the future?
I think, look, sort of technology advances have happened over many decades, and there's always been a need for humans to go be part of that and do work. So, we leverage some technologies that help aid software development. So think of them as coding aids. Maybe it's probably too simplistic a view of it, but like a predictive text on your phone would be, some relevant sort of example to that. But they help people do their job, right? Help them do their job, better. And I think it's just aids to help people achieve better outcomes, for clients. So I don't think there's a massive disruption effect. I think we invest a lot in employees, in reskilling, training employees, and I think they're there to help employees do their job even better. I think it's part why, look, I would encourage people to think about financial services as a career. I think what led me to think about it as an option, I think still exists. So financial services firms spend a lot on technology. I think it's imperative for their business model. I think it has massive scale, geographic reach, a lot of complexity, hard technical problems. So the things that led me to enter the industry 25 years ago, I think still exist. And still sort of will exist.
And there's still a big pipeline of those opportunities and challenges. Perhaps that will help the team do a few things more quickly and focus on the interesting stuff, perhaps.
True.
Yeah, I think I would agree with your perspective on that one. And if you were reflecting and looking back, you've had a long and successful career to date, and more ahead. But what would you tell your younger self, or perhaps do differently?
That's a good question. I think it helps to be curious. I think I've always been. I think be more confident, maybe. I think people, not just me and my younger self, but should think about, like, you're in the job for a reason, right? You should believe in yourself, I think, and have more confidence to take that forward. And then, continue to do what you love. But don't be afraid to try new things, actually, and fail. Because I think you learn, personally for me, and I think others that I've spoken to, I think you learn the most when you are the most uncomfortable at times.
I love that. And thank you for being so open, because I think that's such an important point, the confidence part. And we were talking about it ahead of the show, and I could tell you, a couple of stories that resonate for me in my career journey. I started with one of the biggest consultancies, and as was the case at the time, and might still be the case, very junior people were dropped into uncomfortably senior positions and asked to sort of, do strategic studies or run teams of people who are way more qualified and experienced. And I had a client take me aside, and I think I was sort of 3 or 4 years in, and sort of said, "You're in the role, play the role." And I was like, okay. And it was a real kick up the arse at the time. And I've kept that one with me. And it's the same thing when I took on this show, actually, with a podcast, frankly. And I thought, well, how hard can this be? But it was actually quite scary doing what we're doing, because I'm talking to new people all the time and trying to create something that's educational and entertaining and a decent bit of content out of these conversations. And it's definitely out of the comfort zone. I think I'm still learning, but I'm getting a little bit better at it. But when you push yourself, that's a learning experience.
It is. It's a valuable learning experience, whatever the outcome.
Yeah, well, we're going to time out in a moment because you'll be off to your next global steering committee or whatever it may be, which I wish you luck with. But as a takeaway for the audience, I always ask this: what are you reading or listening to? If you have any spare time, it's always interesting to get some suggestions. So, is there anything that's on your playlist or in your top of your book pile at the moment?
Yeah, I'd say it's a good question. Finding time for reading is not always as available as it used to be. I find Blinkist quite easy,
Yeah.
right, to digest the main content of books in about 15 minutes. And I tend to read nonfiction. So the two books that I'm sort of currently going through, slower than I would like, but one's called Thinking Fast and Slow. I don't know.
I haven't read that one, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's about why we make decisions the way that we do, and humans make two decisions based on two choices, like fast intuitive thinking or slow rational thinking, and how our minds can trip themselves up through errors. That's quite interesting. The other is very sort of technology centric. The Singularity is Nearer. So it's by Ray
Kurzweil?
Yeah, that's it. And look, his thinking is like by the end of this decade, human levels, sort of AI will exceed human levels of intelligence, and during the sort of 2030s to become sort of super intelligent. And he had a book about 20 years ago actually called The Singularity is Near, and this is now The Singularity is Near. I think both books are super interesting if people get the time to sort of page through them, but I'd recommend both of those.
Okay, well, we'll put those in the show notes, and we're pretty much on time. So just remains to say thanks so much for sharing. I think some great corporate insights, but a few personal ones as well. And there's something there for everyone, and a great conversation. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the invite.
Pleasure.